So, welcome, Wendy. Welcome to our podcast, Wired for Wellbeing. We are delighted to have you here to talk about all things well-being and all things three principles. So, welcome. Lovely to have you here, all the way from, is it Boston? No, Massachusetts.
Yes, just outside of Boston, a few minutes outside of Boston, Massachusetts, on the East Coast, where we refer to ourselves in general as New England, for those of you
Mhm.
who are in Old England.
Well, we are the Old English, so
Yeah,
I sit in Spain and Sue sits in England.
there you go.
Old England, apparently.
Yeah.
So,
Welcome.
Wired for Wellbeing is sponsored by the Viva event, and Sue and I are the co-founders of that, as you know, and we are delighted that you accepted our invitation to be one of our 18 speakers this year. We're super looking forward to November the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd this year, 2025.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we're having conversations with our speakers in the aim of sharing what it is that has changed in your life. Yeah, and who are you? So people get to know who you are. We want to make it really relevant for people. We want people to hear and be able to connect and see what's on offer for them.
Sounds like a plan. I'd
Yeah.
love to be able to tell you what changed for me since knowing the principles. It's like night and day. I am, as we speak right now, I'm 66. I'll be 67 in a few days, but let's call me 66 for now. And I discovered the principles, or the principles found me, in 2017. So what is that? 7 years ago. So I was 59. And for 59 years, all the years that I can remember, there was always a little bit of a pit in my stomach, a little bit of a kind of scanning the horizon, waiting for another shoe to drop. And I was all about, I call it whack-a-mole in our country. You've heard of the game whack-a-mole, where they pop up and so it was always about managing things like, oh, you got bad grades in college, you shouldn't have done that, and I need to jump in and help you. And oh, the bank account is lower than we want. Oh, darn it, I've got a cold. I was always kind of ready and anticipating. I really did live what I would call an outside in life. Life on the outside had me by the neck. And it's a very funny story for another time. I heard George Pransky and Steve Chandler have a conversation on the YouTube rabbit hole. So I heard a conversation between both unknown people to me, but they were talking about coaching, which I was interested in at the time, still am. And they talked about the three principles and about inside out understanding. And you guys, it was like a Lego piece just settled in, and I went, oh, got it. I've been a nurse forever, a long time, and I had always seen the inner spark in my patients. I always knew that my job as a nurse was to coach them forward, to reclaim their inner health and move forward. That this broken leg wasn't going to be the end of their story. This cancer diagnosis, as hard as it is, we're gonna get through this together. I always called on that inner healthy part of people. So when I heard about, we all have it, we all have that inner health, emotionally and mentally. Not only does my oxygen system work, not only does my gut system work, that I was used to studying as a nurse, but my psychological system also works beautifully. And its goal is to keep me on an even keel. I'm telling you, I don't live with a pit in my stomach anymore. I just don't. It has been a joy, and it has become the calling of my life, personally and professionally, to share this with people one at a time, five at a time, however it happens. So I am just thrilled to be one more opportunity to talk about it and have this be out on the internet. So thank you.
Oh, that's a beautiful summary, and one that I certainly can relate to, and I imagine many people listening, because it is that simplicity, isn't it? Of this troubled me for all this time, and then it ceased to trouble me. But I'm taking it that you didn't do any practices or any studying for this to happen.
No, it was just becoming aware of it. Like this is a silly analogy maybe, but if you said, I have this car and I really like it and it's beautiful, um, but I just, it's wonderful. But when I'm out on the highway, it gets really hot in the car, really, really hot. And I get stifled. And then somebody says, did you know that cars come with electric buttons to put the windows down? It does? No. Wow. Well, this makes a car ride a lot better. All they had to do was make me aware of the of the windows can go down and my rides are much easier, less hot and humid. Like I didn't study the manual on the car. I didn't go to 5 webinars about car windows. Somebody pointed it out and I went, "Oh, thank you." And I utilized it. And that was pretty similar to what happened for me when I heard about the principles in 2017.
Yeah, I can relate to that. And I think something that keeps popping into my mind is when I first heard about the three principles and how we work psychologically, and and that there's absolutely nothing to do,
Yeah,
because I come from a place of lots of practices, lots of techniques, lots of tools, and to hear nothing to do, it's all about understanding. I think the lazy part of me really loved that. It was like, oh, really? I don't need this bag of tools and techniques anymore. I can just be and listen for insight. That's something we haven't really touched on, but listen for insight. No, just notice what's happening in my life. And once I understand how it works, things are gonna look different. I don't actually do anything. I don't have to sit on a cushion and meditate for hours and hours. That was like, wow, I'm in.
yeah.
Tell me more. Tell me
Tell
more.
me more. Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
that's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
So when you started off by saying you could see the spark in people, you could see it in other people, and it hadn't registered with you, it sounds like. And I relate to that in education, always seeing that in a health in a child. And yet, I'm the teacher standing there sometimes or whatever. Yeah.
Right.
So since that moment, if you like, or that transition,
Yeah.
has that impacted greatly with you and the people that you help and that you work with, and has taken you into this field of, more of a coaching role?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. The term separate realities comes to mind personally for me. And as I coach people, when I used to coach and be a nurse, when I started studying coaching, all of a sudden I was going to get certificates as a coach. And I said, excuse me, but I've been a registered nurse for about 40 years, 35, 40 years. I have been coaching people since the day I got my diploma. So I'm not really worried about that anymore. But that's another story. But the point being is that I was always trying to convince people of things. Like I could lay out, you should try this, and this. Um, I would really want them to see things the way I saw. Like I wanted them to see them as healthy, and I would try to force it, if you will. I would try to reword it and all these different things, and feeling like they were tabla rasa, right? They were an empty stage, and I was helping to fill up their empty cup of self-esteem, or their empty cup of they didn't know how to handle things. So my coaching was directed at more like, oh, I have a good idea about what you should do. Let's have you write out a pros and cons, I would direct. Now separate realities and trusting that they have their own innate well-being system, it's really so much listening with curiosity and care, and maybe asking a question or two that is genuinely curiosity on my part, not asking a question to seek, oh, I think I'll probe this way, but more of a trust. And when pennies drop, when insights come, they come. And not a minute sooner, with Wendy's help or without Wendy's help, right? So I would say, yes, I absolutely do see that trust in the other person's ability, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, to find their true north, to find their North Star, to, if their mind is quiet, it will reveal itself. That trust that I have, it's just a much slower, kinder, gentler time where it's more their voice than mine, literally in an interaction. Yeah.
Beautiful.
It sounds like that creates more of an independence and a freedom for people to then go ahead. They don't need Wendy in their pocket.
Oh, no.
So they begin to
Yeah.
see just what
Yeah.
you saw and what we,
Yep.
you know, and I
Yeah.
think it's fascinating, the idea of this separate realities. Does that relate to, I mean, do you want to say a little bit more about sort of explain that for people? Because I think you've
Oh, sure.
illustrated it.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, the premise is that everything that I feel, anxiety, happiness, good things, uncomfortable things, worry, concern, all these things are as a result of the internal score that I've given something. So something comes up, my bank account looks too low, and I can say, ah, it'll be better next week. Or I can say, what if it's not better next week? Like so that experience of me literally looking at my bank account balance, that experience is driven 100% by the score or how I'm looking at it. That's my reality. My husband could look at the bank balance and say, wow, that's pretty good. That's usually by this time of the month, we're much lower. And I'm like, that never even occurred to me. Right. So it's just a silly example, but separate realities is the way it works all the time. I was mentioning before we started recording that in Massachusetts, it's been raining every weekend. It's been raining, raining, raining. Now, there may be some gardeners that live near me that are like, isn't this great? The gardens are looking so lovely. And they're retired and they don't care about Saturdays and Sundays. I work Monday through Friday. I would like my Saturdays and Sundays to be sunny. So I have a different view of that, right? Is anybody right or anybody wrong? No, it's all separate realities. And so I have a couple of very funny separate reality stories that, I've known these principles for 7 years, but these two things that I'm thinking about for separate realities occurred in the last year or so. I mean, they're kind of funny. Happy to share them if you'd like.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Well, one of them was the Academy Awards. I imagine anybody all over the world is aware that the United States doles out Academy Awards for movies and actresses and actors and so forth. So in 2023, the movie that won Best Picture, the Academy Award, Best Picture, was Everything Everywhere All at Once. I don't know if either of you know that movie or whatever. Okay. Some of you do. Jeff and I went to that movie because it had a lot of hype back before the Academy Awards, back in 2022. And we went there and we sat there, we were like, we just paid $15 to see this movie, so $30, plus we got some popcorn. We're going to stay in these seats until this movie proves itself. It never did. It was the most ridiculous use of my time. It was the most ridiculous movie I've ever seen. And for those of you that were on the movie that are watching me right now on the internet, I'm sorry, but you made a lousy movie. Just saying. Now, clearly, the people that sit on this, whatever they sit on, to determine good movies, saw things much differently than me and Jeff. And to this day, it still makes me scratch my head. I cannot see anything redeeming about it at all. Entertainment-wise, story-wise, nothing. So anyway, that's a grand scale, separate reality. Like I am, it's me against the world kind of thing. So okay, but I will trust the fact, what. Yeah, so somebody's got the award. It's beyond me. More recently, I went to a diner. Now, I don't know if that's a word that everybody knows about, but it's a kind of like a great place for a good breakfast and coffee. And so my husband and I were sitting at the counter on these stools that spin around, and so we ordered a coffee and we were waiting for our meal to come. And the woman brought this waitress bought a little bowl with little tiny plastic containers of cream in them. Does that sound familiar? Okay. So I read I read the top of the item and it said half and half creamer. Now, half and half, I understand in the United Kingdom is not a common thing. Half and half in the United States is half milk, half cream. And half is a very common thing to get. So this said half and half creamer. So the word creamer to me means something artificial. So I'm looking at this and I'm reading and the ingredients just don't say milk and cream. They say, so I said to the woman, I said, half and half creamer, is this kind of chemically? And she said, yeah. She said, I'll get you the real thing. Hold on, I'll go to the kitchen. And so she comes out with a little picture of half and half, supposedly. What do I know? There's no label on it, but I'll assume she was correct. And as I'm saying to my husband, do you believe they put chemicals in their cream? As I'm ripping open Splenda packets and pouring them into my coffee. Okay. Hello. What is wrong with me? So the score I assigned to the Splenda was great, good stuff. And the score I assigned to half and half creamer was evidently left wanting. So even within the self, there are some moments of humor. And, as I was pouring them in, the penny dropped in that very moment. I said, look at me pouring chemicals into my coffee and all snotty about this little creamer. So he and I had a good laugh and I shared it with the waitress who probably did or didn't understand quite the extent of the humor of it all. But anyway, so there you go. That's kind of life to me. And I appreciate the ability to much more often. I don't get into tangles with sisters. I used to get into tangles and try to make them see things my way. And you're wrong. Mom and dad never said that. This, so many times. And now I'm just so much quieter. Doesn't sound like it right now because I'm blabbering, but I'm just so much quieter and willing to let people have their experience. It's internally driven. There's no external stakes in the ground, except, the sun does rise in the east and set in the west. But other than that, it could be up for grabs.
It's great that you share. And it's funny, just at the end, you've sort of been very humorous. And I love that about you, Wendy. I love that. What I'm seeing is having an understanding of how we work and how you don't see the same reality as your husband, for example. I imagine that's pretty helpful in a relationship. In fact, I know I'm not in your relationship, I'm imagining it is generally in relationships to be able to see that nobody's right, because you said that earlier on, like, I'm not right, he's not right. Who knows who's right? It's like,
Correct.
wow, that's just such an amazing piece of information
Yes.
that we've gleaned from this understanding. It's like, wow, we are each creating our own reality, experience, moment to moment to moment to moment.
Yes.
How can anybody be wrong? Nobody
Right.
can be wrong because we're not even choosing the thoughts that we have in that moment. It's like, it is what it is. It doesn't mean that we have to accept everything that's happening all the time, but it makes it a hell of a lot easier to navigate a
Yep.
relationship.
Yep. Totally. Totally. It's a very different world. And Jeff will tell you if he was, here with us, he would tell you, he said, oh yeah, she's not the same person. And he liked me all those other years, but there's it's a it's a
That's
it's
handy.
yeah, but it's a much more peaceful, and a trusting coexistence. I used to think that I was, the practical one and the one that really understood how things really worked and what needed to be done next and so forth. And he's got his own way of doing things, and it works out. It just works out. Yeah.
Might be a longer way round than you would have taken, but we could get to the
Maybe.
same
Yeah.
place. Might
Yeah.
take 2 minutes longer or 10 hours later. Who knows? But it does. I mean, as we say that, it's the journey that counts, right? It's not the
Yes.
destination.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Exactly.
think what I hear in that as well, which I can closely relate to, is relationships can be really complicated when you're trying to sort out every aspect of the
Yes.
differences. And in a way, this no, of course there are differences, but let's look at those and find out about each other. It's a wonderful invitation. And the word
Yes.
that comes to mind is respect. And we say, I love my husband. And then we go disrespecting the person that may be the closest, most loved person in our lives by arguing with from small to big details. And
Right.
when that all lies down and goes away, what's left? Well, it's lovely. It's the harmony. And when something comes up that needs to be discussed, we're going into it with a much calmer mindset and a quiet
Much.
mind and with respect. And
Yeah.
that was a big lesson for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought
I
the
remember.
more I talked, the more I could, explain my point of view.
Yes, exactly. I remember, even another example was, my husband and I are both, we're faith-based people, and so we really enjoy, you know, um, Christian the Christian path, the Christian walk. And, my husband takes the Catholic approach, and I take the Protestant approach, and we find our way. But it's they're different. And, recently he had what I would call a bit of a crisis of faith, where he was like, "Nope, not doing it. Gonna it's not working. I don't see the light," whatever. And in years past, I assure you, that little pit in my stomach would have grown, and I would have said, "Oh, but have you tried? Think about this. Visit this priest. Go to this thing. Read this book. Do this, do that." Don't, there would be a panic about, don't leave me and don't leave this value system that we have. And I was so conscious in the moment. I was of two minds. I held his hand and I didn't look at him. I let him talk and I listened and I didn't say a word. And there was a part of me that was a little bit worried. And I said, "Just be quiet. Just be quiet." And I was. I didn't say anything. And I just held him and listened. And that storm cloud in his life passed. And, you know, he's been walking this path. He's 65 or whatever he is, 66 himself. He's been walking this path since he was 7. There's probably been a lot of storm clouds that I didn't know about. He happened to share that one. And I like nothing better than Jeff and I to be in concert and in sync. So that was like, "Oh, don't leave me." And, I wasn't worried about him and God. God's bigger than that, but I just didn't want to have that sort of a breach, if you will. So, but I quieted myself down and said, "Just listen." So I can still kind of hear and feel my hand in his, and I can hear my two sides talking to each other. Yeah.
Wendy, I'm curious for the listeners. I think I know the answer to this question. For the listeners, I'm really curious. How did you know to listen? How did you know to stay quiet and listen? What's changed?
Oh, that's kind of easy. When people are listened to, they can get their thoughts out, or so either verbalize them or have uninterrupted time to let things sift through. It's sort of like a snow globe, right? When there's a million thoughts or a dialogue, ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, ping. What about this? Have you thought about that? Did you get this book? It's taking them in the direction that I might want to suggest that they go in. But when we listen to other people, when I listen to other people, that the ping pong stuff kind of settles, and they can see through, if you will, the snow globe. They can hear themselves. And it reminds me, I'm sitting at the very table where my 17-year-old son, a long time ago, he was 17, sat right there in that chair, 3 feet away from me. And he was holding his head in his hands. He said, "I can't even hear myself think." Now, that was a long, long, long time ago, and I've never forgotten it. And even then, I wanted to say to him, "I know, I really wish you could find that space to be able to hear yourself think." And that I can't even hear myself think. The word myself in that sentence is my inner health. I know what I need, but I can't even hear myself. The busy mind, can't even hear myself, the quiet, steady heartbeat of being alive. I can't even hear it, and I want to hear it. And so listening, I don't really know, Sheila, how to answer you about how I thought of that in that moment, but in general terms, listening to other people and trusting that their reality, how they need to take care of themselves or want to take care of themselves, will emerge without me dialoguing or poking the bear or asking questions or coaching them yeah. So I've experienced that with you and Sue in listening circles in this conversation, and I have learned greatly from it. And I'll share one more quick thing. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I gave up alcohol myself about 18, 19 years ago now, and I really enjoy those conversations. And they've only gotten more like sparkly since the principles, because there's so much overlap in terms of thinking and so forth. So it occurred to me, I had an insight while I was in one of the circles with you and Jack Pransky a few years ago, was like, oh my gosh, I already know how to listen well. Because when you're in an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, somebody says, "Hi, my name's Wendy, I'm an alcoholic." And then they say whatever they need to say. And we just listen, and we listen, and we listen, and we don't offer advice. We don't talk back. We don't ask questions. We just listen deeply. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a beautiful way to be in connection and community with other people. And I'd already done that. And now it's so listening has really become a really big door, if you will, into understanding for me, into really seeing the value of the inside out understanding these 3 principles. Huge listening.
It reminds me of your car analogy, that so when we're in the circle where it's all set up for listening, we listen and then we leave it there. We don't suddenly think, well, this is a beautiful experience. I could do this all the time.
Right.
So that's another penny that can drop, that can enhance all of our lives, and all
Exactly.
of our relationships. And it's not a thing you do, it's an awareness that you gain that leads to this lovely experience that 2 or more people can have, that
Yeah,
doesn't require words. It's amazing, isn't it?
it really is. It really is. Life-changing.
Thank you so much, Wendy, for coming along and sharing some time with us and offering
Yeah.
your nuggets of wisdom. Always great to speak to you. So how could people get in touch with you if they wanted to?
Sure. My website, I just refreshed it actually. It's www.forwardwithwendy.com. So forwardwithwendy.com.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
And as we said at the beginning of the show, if we can even call this a show, it's probably just something I hear other people say. Yeah, we are the vivaevent.com, Sue and I, and we have a website as well called thevivaevent.com. So if you want to find us, please check us out, thevivaevent.com. You'll find Wendy Williams on there with her bio, and we will post below in the show notes these URLs, these links for you to go and find. So again,
Perfect.
once again, thank you so much, and to everybody
Thank
that's
you, Wendy.
listening and watching, Wired for Wellbeing, that's who you are. So we'll see you next time. Bye
All
for
right. Take
now.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.